We will now transition over to a team that's got their own trying times. Ladies and gentlemen, the Cleveland Browns. If you were wondering what the next chapter of the worst transaction/acquisition in the history of the NFL was, it's the fact that Deshaun Watson is now set to have another surgery on his Achilles. He suffered a setback. Andrew Berry, the GM of the Cleveland Browns, spoke about that at the end of season press conference he had and said, hey, Deshaun suffered a little bit of a setback. We're just kind of monitoring it to see what the next steps are going to be. And as it happened, he's going to have another surgery, and so that'll be surgery 2, and now puts the entire next season in jeopardy. Now, the question becomes, can they get out of it, the Browns, meaning can they find him in violation of his contract? Because was he doing something that is forbidden in his contract, and is there language in the contract pointing to you can't do this, play basketball, skydiving, whatever it is, and maybe he did it, and that's how he re-aggravated the injury, so maybe they can get out of the $92 million left on the, whatever. Listen, they're going to try. They're going to look into this and see what they can do. Apparently there's some stuff on social media that Deshaun Watson posted that shows him not in a walking boot, and should he have had a walking boot on. Now, I wouldn't know that those are posted because he's blocked me on social media. And that's been the case for a couple of years now. Okay. And I'm not making that up. That is a real thing. So I am blocked. I cannot see what he has posted on social media. That is true. That's a real thing. And this is way before all the Massage Watson stuff came out. Way before. This was, me being critical of his handling of his time and departure in Houston and all that. This is way before that. But, maybe the Browns are going to look into this and they're going to see whether or not they can get out of the deal and if they can or what. But listen, that's fine. The problem with this whole situation is not so much with Deshaun Watson, because the two people that are responsible for this quote-unquote marriage, which, look, I mean, you can be judgmental of the contract or whatnot. Deshaun Watson took the best deal in the history of the NFL. You can't blame the guy. But, the two people responsible for this are Deshaun Watson and Jimmy Haslam, the owner. They're the ones that made this work. They're the ones responsible for this marriage. And again, I don't fault Deshaun Watson for taking the contract. Who wouldn't? Wait a second. You're going to give me fully guaranteed money and I'm not playing in the NBA? Or Major League Baseball? Okay, yeah, I'll come to Cleveland. We've gone over how that whole thing happened, multiple times on this show. He was set to go to Atlanta. The Falcons, it was, signed, sealed, and delivered. He had a jersey and everything. And then the Browns got desperate because they burned the bridge with Baker Mayfield. And they decided we needed to go over the top in an offer and give him something he couldn't refuse. And they did so. And he didn't refuse it. And I don't blame the guy for it. But Jimmy Haslam and Deshaun Watson are responsible for this, and it's them alone. They're responsible. But it's everybody else who's going to suffer because of it, and already has. Andrew Berry has built a very good roster. He's done a hell of a job. But because of this that the owner wanted and the quarterback obliged, they've been put in a difficult spot ever since he's gotten there. And yet they're the ones, Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, who have had to speak publicly about it more so than the owner who wanted this to happen and signed off on it has the entire time that Deshaun Watson has been there. So Andrew Berry is going to suffer because of this. Kevin Stefanski is going to suffer because of this. You know what we know about Kevin Stefanski? He's won Coach of the Year twice. And he's done it with quarterbacks not named Deshaun Watson. So he's not the problem. Like, he can coach. Like, we've seen it. We've got multiple cases of it. Like, look, Browns won a playoff game. They were in the playoffs last year with Joe Flacco. Like, we've seen it. Now, even though Kevin Stefanski wasn't on the sideline for that playoff win because he had COVID, and that was back during that whole weird time. But the point is, Kevin Stefanski can coach. Like, we've seen he's done wonders with other quarterbacks not named Deshaun Watson. But Deshaun Watson hasn't been able to stay healthy or, like, not get suspended for 11 games. So Kevin Stefanski, he's the one who's going to have to suffer because of it. And I got news for you. The fact that Kevin Stefanski's job was even in jeopardy or even thought to be in jeopardy this past offseason or this offseason or the year before, the fact that that was even a possibility or a thought shows you what a disaster this has been. Like, think about how many players there within the Browns organization who have had to suffer, and they're the ones having to feel the wrath because of this terrible contract. Whether it's, guys that have done it the right way, like a Nick Chubb, Myles Garrett is putting together a Hall of Fame career, and even he's like, dude, I need to know what the plan is here, because this is turning into, we're just a bad organization, and we're going to continue to lose games. Like, look at the fans. Like, how many Cleveland Browns fans are looking around going, I didn't really like the deal to start with, and I especially don't like the deal now. Like, you kind of, like, when the move was announced, when the deal was signed and the trade was made, you got kind of a weird vibe about it. Really? Knowing all that we know, this is where we're going? Like, knowing all that we know, and then what makes it even worse is the fact that the places that the Browns and Deshaun Watson left are both playing in another playoff game this weekend. Second year in a row. You couldn't wait to get rid of Baker Mayfield. Had to go. Move on. He's been one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL this year. He's in the playoffs again in Tampa. They love the guy. They love him. He's been fantastic. Deshaun Watson's ex, the Houston Texans. Oh, ho-hum, no big deal. Just another playoff appearance. Say whatever you want about the Texans, but... So it's like you look at the situation and you go, well, of course this is the next chapter of it because it's the worst acquisition transaction in the history of the NFL, and it's not close. I mentioned the Russell Wilson, Denver Broncos union that took place that everyone thought was a total, you talk about a mess and one of the worst ever. It's like, yeah, well, that was like a bad one, but, both seem to have recovered and, like, found happy places. Like, it seemed like it ended up working out. This one has been a complete and total failure for the Cleveland Browns. Like, absolute failure. It felt awkward from the get-go. It felt weird and dirty from the get-go. And now him having another surgery, they're going to have to investigate whether or not, like, he breached his contract and was doing something he shouldn't have been doing, and that's why he suffered the injury, and he wasn't wearing a walking boot, and there's social media evidence. Like, come on, dude. Like, you cannot whiff any more on a deal than the Browns did with this Deshaun Watson stuff. It's been a full-fledged 5-star disaster for the Cleveland Browns. And so, of course, this will be the next step in the story. They should, I swear, and I've said this before, there needs to be a documentary done or a study done on how a move that was risky to begin with could pan out any worse than this one has for the Cleveland Browns. Awful, awful situation. And yet, to my previous point, the two people who are responsible for it are Deshaun Watson and Jimmy Haslam, and they're the two people who will feel the least amount of it. Because he's getting paid, and Jimmy Haslam's made a bunch of money since he's been there because he's an owner of an NFL team.